So we'll be taking weighted average cost of capital on strategic financial management, Ican, question 5 from May 2022. So the question will be read, then we are going to profile a solution to the question.
The directors of Jidadi PLC, JP, an Abuja-based entertainment company, are currently considering the appropriate cost of capital to use in appraising capital investments. It is the policy of the company to assess the financial viability of all capital projects using net present value criteria. You have been provided with some financial information of the company. Most recent statement of financial position: equity finance, ordinary shares at ₦1 nominal value 200, reserves 120, total 320. Non-current liabilities: 7% convertible bonds at ₦100 nominal value 160, 5% preference shares at ₦1 nominal value 80, total 240. Current liabilities: trade payables 80, overdraft 120, total 200, grand total 760. JP has an equity beta of 1.2 and the ex-dividend market value of the company's equity is ₦1 billion. The ex-interest market value of the convertible bonds is ₦168 million and the ex-dividend market value of the preference shares is ₦50 million. The convertible bonds of JP have a conversion ratio of 19 ordinary shares per bond. The conversion dates and redemption dates are both on the same date in 5 years' time. The current ordinary share price of JP is expected to increase by 4% per year for the foreseeable future. The equity risk premium is 5% per year and the risk-free rate of return is 4% per year. JP pays profit tax at an annual rate of 30% per year. Required: A. Calculate the market value after tax weighted average cost of capital of JP, explaining clearly any assumptions you make. B. Discuss why market value weighted average cost of capital is preferred to book value weighted average cost of capital when making investment decisions.
The A part of the question says calculate the market value after tax weighted average cost of capital of JP, explaining clearly any assumptions you make. So on the weighted average cost of capital, WACC, formula is simply our equity over market value is MV multiplied by cost of equity plus debt over market value multiplied by cost of debt. If there is any need for, if there is tax, you have 1 minus tax. If tax is not treated in getting the cost of debt, or we can treat the tax while getting the cost of debt and not add it as part of what we have here. So whichever way we want to do it. Then we'll add preference share. There is preference share divided by the market value times the cost of preference shares. That gives the weighted average cost of capital. Then the E stands for equity. The D stands for debt. P stands for preference share. Then KE stands for cost of equity. KD stands for cost of debt. KP stands for cost of preference share. MV stands for market value. Is simply equity plus debt plus preference in case there is preference. So each of these components needs to be gotten before we proceed to compute the weighted average cost of capital. We'll start by getting each of the components needed based on the information provided in the question. first we need to get the market values. Here we are told that JP has an equity beta of 1.2 and the ex-dividend market value of the company's equity is 1 billion. So ex-dividend means the value which they are not expected to still pay dividend on have already settled dividend. So ex-dividend value is 1 billion. So here I will use source and I will use amount in million. The source here is ordinary shares. The ex-dividend value as provided is 1 million, so I will just use 1,000 since I'll save the millions. Here, going forward, they also say we have the ex-interest market value of the convertible bonds. So convertible bonds. Convertible bonds was, according to the equation, we have 168 million. Then going forward, we also have the ex-dividend market value of the preference shares as 50 million. Preference shares, that is 50 million. Add them together, this represents our equity, this represents our debt, this represents our preference share. Added together, we'll get the market value. Now, the market value, after adding 1,000 plus 168 plus 50, will give us 1218. So that is 1218, which represents the market value. That is one component in the weighted average cost of capital. We have gotten equity, we have gotten debt, we have gotten preference share market value. So we need the cost of equity, cost of debt, and cost of preference. Then we'll proceed to weighted average cost of capital. Starting with the cost of equity. Which we are going to get based on the information. We have been given risk-free rates, we have been given market risk premium, we have been given beta, meaning we can use the CAP-M model for cost of equity. It's a capital asset pricing model. The cost of equity here is the risk-free rate plus the beta into market return less risk-free. And the market return less risk-free gives us what we call the market premium, market risk premium. Based on the information we have the cost of equity to be, the risk-free rate is 4%, plus the beta is 1.2. So the bracket of risk-free minus this have been given as market risk premium of 5%. So that will give us a cost of equity of 1.2 times 5% plus 4. That will give us 10%. So the cost of equity is 10%. If we go to the cost of equity, we equally need the cost of debt and the cost of preference shares. Then we proceed to weighted average cost of capital. We're taking the cost of debt, cost of debt, which is a convertible bonds. For the convertible bonds, we are going to be considering whether we'll be converting the bond or we are going to redeem at the end. Now, if we are converting it, if we are redeeming it, we have 100 naira, which is the face value. So as redemption, consider redemption at 100 or conversion. For conversion, based on the information we are giving here, they say that for us to convert it, they say converting bonds for JP, the conversion ratio is 19 ordinary shares per bond. And going further, they say the conversion date and redemption date are both on the same date in 5 years. In 5 years' time, the current ordinary share price of JP is expected to increase by 4%. So we'll find the current price. Current price, current equity price. So the current equity price, based on the information we have ordinary shares 1 naira nominal value. Then in that most recent financial statement, we have ordinary shares 1 naira nominal value in, then we have 200 million as the value there. So to get the number of shares the number of shares is simply, we have 200 million divided by the 1 naira nominal value. That will give us 200 million shares. 200 million shares. So this is 200 million shares. So to get the current price of equity would be 200 million shares. They say they have 1 billion ex dividend value. 1 billion divided by that 200 million shares. That will give us 5 naira as the current share price. 5 naira. Now, since this 5 naira and we want to convert, but they clearly also told us that it will grow at 4%. It's expected to grow at 4%. It will grow at 4%. So if this grows at 4%, we'll be having, considering growth for 5 years, we'll have 5 naira times 1.04, which is the 4% growth, raised to the power of 5. So 1.04 raised to the power of 5 times 5 naira will give us 6.08 naira. So we have it 6.08 naira after considering the growth over 5 years. Then we'll multiply this 6.08 by the 19, which they said you can convert it 19 shares times that value. So we have 19 shares times 6.08. 19 shares times 6.08 will give us an amount of 115.52 naira. 115.52 naira. Now, conversion give us a higher value than redemption. So he is going to convert. JP will convert. Since 115.52 is greater than 100, which will be considered if he is going to redeem. Then, since he's going to convert, we are going to bring in some other factors. We'll consider the annual interest. The annual interest that was given in the question is 7% for convertible bonds out of the nominal value of 100. We'll consider that. So we'll have 7% of 100, which will give us 7 naira. Annual interest. Well, 7% times face value of 100, which will give us another value, will give us 7 naira. We'll consider this post-tax. This one is pre-tax. The post-tax value of it will be 7 into 1 minus 0.3, since the tax is 30%. That will give us the post-tax amount. So the post-tax amount is simply 4 naira 90 kobo. So we'll have 4 naira 90 kobo as the post-tax value. Since you've gotten the post-tax value, you can proceed. We also need the current market price. The current market price per bond. Just as we have gotten this is for equity, but we need that for bond, so that we can know what is the actual cost of the bond. So we need the current market price of bond. Current market price. Market price of bond. Given the information we have here, we have bonds market value is 168 million and nominal value is 160 million. So we'll have 168 million over 160 million times the nominal of this value. This will give us the current market price of the bond. So the current market price of the bond gives us 105 naira. 105 naira is the current market price. So what we'll be looking for, which is that cost of the bond, we'll be looking for the rates that will help to give us this 105. And that will be done through trial and error. We try and error for the sake of this video, so that we won't have a very lengthy video. We are going to just pick some rates that have been predetermined, so that it will cut the length short, but it's usually by process of trial and error. So we'll have 105 and we'll be looking for the rate through trial and error that will give us that 105. So considering that we'll have 4.90, which we have gotten there as our annual interest, we are going to consider the annuity factor. Since it's going to be paid over 5 years, we'll consider the annuity factor. We'll also consider the terminal value, which is this, which we have already worked. Take the 115, the 115.52, which we have already worked. We are going to consider that. We discount that value. We discount the value, the one we got by conversion. We discount it. It's already there. So 115.52. We are going to discount this as the terminal value. We are going to use annuity for this. Then we'll add them together and compare it with this bond price. We'll do it for each of the rates we are going to try. Then we'll apply our linear interpolation. So we'll try at 6% first. Using, okay, let me say trial and error. Trial and error. So we'll have at 6%. At 6%, we'll be having, based on the annuity value, the annuity sum, we'll be using a table, so we don't waste time with that. The annuity factor, based on the annuity table, at 5 years, at the rate of 6%, will give us 4.212 according to the table. But when solving, we might have something slightly different. We'll have 4.217. So we'll be having 4.90 times multiplied by 4.217 based on the amount that is going to be paid. That is the annual payment. That will give us 20.66. So 20.66 naira is annual payment. Annual payment. So this is the annual payment. Then we are going to find the terminal value. Now to get the discount factor at 5%, we will not need to be solving that. You can use the discount table or present value table. The discount factor at 6% for 5 years will give us 0 points based on solving that we have here. We have 0.747. So 0.747, we are going to multiply it by this amount of 115.52 multiplied by the discount factor of 0.747. So once we multiply that, we'll get an amount which is 86.29 naira. 86.29 naira. Now the total will be 20.66 naira plus 86.29 naira. Total gives us 106.95 naira. 106.95 naira. Now, if you observe, this value is higher than this. Is higher than this. So we are looking for the rate, meaning at 6%, the value is actually higher than this. We are having 106.95. But what we are looking for is this. So we'll try a higher rate of 7% and see. Then we will now use the linear interpolation process to get the exact rate that will give us this 105. So we try out 7%. So at 7%, at 7%, we will be finding the annual payment and the terminal value. So annual payment, terminal value. And we probably have the total. So this, we still have 4.90 times the annuity factor. Then here we have 115.52 times the discount factor. So annuity factor for 7% for 5 years gives us 4.100 according to the table. Annuity table 4.100. Then the discount factor gives us 0.713. 0.713 according to. So our payment becomes 4.90 times 4.1 times 4.100, which is 20.09 naira. So we have 20.09 naira. That is the annual payment. Then the terminal value will have 115.52 times 0.713, which gives us 82.37. So 82.37. So added together, we'll be having 20.09 plus 82.37. 20.09 plus 82.37 gives us a total of 102.46. We have 102.46. Now, this is lower than this. You can see now that the rate is between 6% and 7%. So we use linear interpolation to get the actual rate. Once you are plotting it, you can now go to the cost of preference share. So we can apply the linear interpolation. So using interpolation, if you recall the formula for IRR, we talked about the formula, but this is looking very similar to that. We're using the formula cost of debt is equal to lower rate. Our abbreviate lower rate as LR, lower rate plus open bracket difference between PV at 6% and bond price. Difference between PV at 8% and bond price. Difference between PV at 8% and bond price all over difference between PV at 8%, then PV at 6%, sorry, PV at 6%, we solve 6 and 7, at 6% of bond price, because of the length of the formula, we have minus difference between bond price and PV at 7%, difference between bond price and PV at 7% multiplied by high rate minus low rate. We have that already in the equation, so we'll find out the difference. The difference between PV and bond price first. The difference between PV and bond price, the bond price as we computed is 105 naira. So the PV we got initially at 6%. The PV at 6% was 106.95 minus 105 will give us the difference, and the difference we have is 1.93 naira. 1.93 naira. Secondly, the difference between the bond price and the PV at 7%. This is 102.46 minus 105. This will give us a negative value that will give us minus 2.54 minus 2.54. Now these are the values we use here. So cost of debt now, which is for the convertible bond, the lower rate is 6% plus here will give us 1.93 divided by 1.93. Here is minus, so minus will give us plus, so that will be plus 2.54. All into higher rate minus lower rate. Higher rate minus lower rate is simply 7% minus 6%, which is 1%. So cost of debt is equal to 6% plus we have sort of breaking it down. All of these put together for the length of the video, we have KD is equal to, after we get this plus this, we divide this, 7 minus this is 1%. So 1% times the value we have here plus 6% will give us, based on the computation or calculation, will give us 6.43% as we computed. 6.43%. This becomes the cost of debt or cost of convertible bonds. We can do the cost of preference shares, then the weighted average cost of capital, and that will be for the B part of the equation. So cost of preference shares. Cost of preference. Cost of preference shares. For cost of preference shares, we have KP equal to dividend per share over market price per share. So we have KP equal to dividend share over market price per share. Dividend per share over market price per share. Now the dividend per share, based on the equation, we have 5% of 1 naira, because in the equation there we have 1 naira nominal value and 5% preference shares. So 5% of 1 naira is going to give us 0.05 naira. So 5% of 1 naira is going to give us 0.05 naira. That is for dividend per share. Then the market price per share, according to the equation, we have 50 million. We have 50 million. Based on what we have here, they say market value of preference shares is 50 million. In our table here, we only have 5% preference shares at 1 naira nominal value, which is 80 million. So we are going to be dividing the 50 million divided by 80 million shares, which will give us, so that will be 50 million divided by 80 million shares. Because here we have 80 million naira, we divided the 80 million naira by 1 naira per share, and that gave us 80 million shares. So this will give us the market price per share. The market price per share, based on the calculator here, we are having 0.625 naira. So that is 0.625 naira. So KP, which is cost of preference shares, will now be 0.05 divided by 0.625. 0.05 divided by 0.625 is going to give us 8% as the cost of preference shares. The cost of preference shares turns out to be 8%. So we can proceed to the weighted average cost of capital. Weighted average cost of capital. Weighted average cost of capital. Since that's what we want here, weighted average cost of capital. Based on the formula we have written before, we have equity over market value multiplied by cost of equity plus debt, that is the debt over market value multiplied by cost of debt plus preference share over market value multiplied by cost of preference shares. That will give us weighted average cost of capital. So our equity, based on what you have completed before, is 1,000. So 1,000 over, or just call it, what is 1 million? Over market value. According to our market value from our computation, we have 1218. 1218. And the cost of equity based on our computation is 10%. So multiply by 10% plus the debt value is 168. So that is 168 million divided by 1218 times the cost of debt. According to our computation here, the cost of debt is 6.43%. 6.43% plus preference shares. Our preference shares will have 50 divided by 1218 times the cost of preference share, which is 8% based on our computation. We have that, so we need to be breaking them down one after the other. 1,000 divided by 1218 gives us 0.821. So WACC 0.821 times 10%. plus 168 divided by 121 will give us 0.138. 0.138 times 6.43% plus 50 divided by 1218 is going to give us 0.041. 0.041 times 8%. So weighted average cost of capital, this times this plus this times this plus this times this. I'll just punch them all together in the calculator. Okay, individually we have 8.21% here. 8.21% plus we have 0.89%. We'll have 0.33%. 0.33% added together gives us weighted average cost of capital to be 8.21 plus 0.89 plus 0.33 to give us 9.43%. So that gives us 9.43% as our weighted average cost of capital. So WACC, which is the A part of the question, has been answered. The B aspect of the question is identify the advantages and disadvantages of operating the Treasury Department as a profit center. Okay, reading a different question altogether. Discuss why market value weighted average cost of capital is preferred to book value weighted average cost of capital when making investment decisions. So why is it preferred? Why using market value WACC or market value weighted average instead of book value weighted average? Now, market values are realistic. They are more realistic. It tends to show a picture of what is obtainable currently, and book value is historical. Sometimes it might be outdated. It's not updated on time. That is one of the reasons. For it to be more accurate, the market value is needed, since using the book value sometimes can overstate the value of debt. Then to avoid wrong investment decision, WACC, which can be underestimated if book value is used. So it is advisable that the market value should be used. And if this WACC is underestimated because of that, choosing a project, we might make a wrong decision in choosing a project. So debt may be close in value, but equity isn't. What they mean is, for debt, it is closer to the book value, but equity is not closer to the book value. Things can change drastically. So using the book value, we might be painting a wrong picture of the equity value. The market value weighted average cost of capital leads to a better decision making when compared to that of the book value. These are just a few points, and thank you very much for your time.